Ada Lennox noticed the flyer on her way back from another late shift at the Riverside Insurance office, an index card rectangle taped to a street lamp between concert ads and offers for self-defense lessons, its pastel letters almost glowing against the February dusk. Try tomorrow, today, Dream Flavored Ice Cream, first scoop, free 117. Lock Street, 4 p.m. midnight. She smiled despite the wind that needled her ears. Marketing gimmick, she thought, but the phrase dream-flavored nudged a tender place she usually guarded. At 27, she had a desk, a cubicle, and a boss who believed color-coding spreadsheets was creativity. Yet every lunch break, she sketched cityscapes on napkins, imagining them inside children's books whose titles she could almost taste. 117 Lock Street turned out to be a slender storefront, squeezed between a locksmith and a boarded-up theater. A bell chimed as Ada stepped inside. Warm air carried the velvety sweetness of caramel, pine needles after rain, and something electrically bright, like ozone before a storm. The parlor was long and narrow, lined with mismatched chairs. Strings of paper stars hung from the ceiling, and instead of the normal glass case of Neapolitan and mint chip, a single polished counter held dozens of brass-lidded cylinders. Their plaques bore names Ada had never seen on any menu. Second Wind Cinnamon, Unwritten Lullaby, Dawn Above the Fog, and 100 more. Behind the counter stood a man with silver hair pulled into a braid, wearing an apron patterned with constellations. His eyes, the green of new grass, seemed startlingly awake. "Welcome to Garner's," he said, voice soft but carrying. "I'm Rowan. First scoop is on the house, provided you answer a question." Ada rested her elbows on the counter. "Do I have to guess the secret ingredient?" "Nothing so crass. Tell me, when you shut your eyes, what flickers first, a memory, a wish, or a fear?" The honesty of the question caught her unprepared. "A wish," she answered, before she could shape it into something safer. Rowan nodded at once, turned and lifted the lid from a cylinder whose plaque read "Canvas at Dawn." A ribbon of pale peach ice cream spiraled out of the container without any scoop at all. It hovered, shimmered, then fell into a waffle cup. "Peach? Or is that apricot?" Ada asked, pretending she was still in a normal shop. Rowan placed the cup before her. "Taste and see." She took a spoonful. On her tongue bloomed something peaches could only envy. Sunlight through linen curtains, pages fresh from a sketchbook. The moment pencil first meets paper, behind her eyelids unfolded a place she'd almost forgotten. The attic of her grandparents' house, where, age 11, she had built forts from canvases and dreamed of illustrating stories too strange for daylight. Shapes surfaced. A goose in goggles steering an airship, a lonely lighthouse walking on metal legs. They felt as close as a held breath. When she opened her eyes, the flavor lingered. A tremor of certainty rippled through her chest, not epiphany clarity, as though someone had scrubbed fog from a window she hadn't known was dirty. Rowan watched her carefully. "Rowan rarely solves everything, but it points a direction. Will you need a pint to take home?" Ada laughed, dizzy. "No, if it's that easy, I'll quit my job tomorrow." "It isn't easy," he said, "but it's possible, and possibility tastes best fresh." She thought he was humoring her until he laid a folded paper crane beside her cup. In careful ink it read, "First step, bring art outside the margins." Then beneath it, an address, 38 Ridley Lane, Saturday 10 a.m., open market stalls available. "How did you—" "Dreams speak," Rowan said. "I only listen." He winked, and the bell chimed behind Ada, though no one had entered. When she turned back, the crane was gone, but the address was stamped on her palm in faint gold. Outside, the city felt different, as though the pavement carried secrets she could finally hear. Ada walked home, planning not dinner but color palettes. In the park, decked out in darker balloony rum colors before dressing for work, she slipped a few finished postcards into her bag. At noon, she ignored the cafeteria, stood in line at the office printer, and used the lamination machine she'd never touched. By 4 o'clock, she had 8 miniature prints sealed against fingerprints. The courage to share them appeared where hesitation usually waited, like a chair moved aside. As colleagues trickled past her desk, she stood, held out a print of a fox sipping tea atop a street lamp, and said, "I made postcards free if you want one." Most blinked, then smiled, then left carrying color. Her boss, Mr. Vining, paused. "Interesting hobby," he said. "Just don't let it encroach on billing hours." Ada surprised herself. It might become more than a hobby. He shrugged, and walked away, but his indifference didn't matter. Her heart was drumming a jubilant cadence it hadn't sounded in years. That evening, she returned to Garner's. The bell greeted her like an old friend. The scent inside had shifted, now tinged with almond and campfire smoke. 4 patrons occupied tables, a teenager in a marching band jacket, an elderly woman with a sketchbook, a man in cycling gear humming to himself, and a small girl whose hair was divided by multicolored barrettes. Rowan looked up from polishing a silver spoon. "Back so soon?" "I did what the crane suggested," Ada said, sliding onto a stool. "Market this Saturday, but I have no booth, no table, barely enough pieces. A refill." Then Rowan lifted another lid. The plaque read, "Stitch in Time. Dark swirls, marbled honey ice cream. Creative momentum with a dash of practicality. This scoop tasted of walnut bread, sharpened pencils, and lists that check themselves off." Images fluttered. Ada packing a collapsible easel, borrowing a folding table from a neighbor, ordering a square reader for payments. She saw the smile of a customer whose apartment wall gained color because she dared to show up. She inhaled, and the vision left her, but its blueprint remained, steady as pulse. Above the counter, chalk writing appeared where the menu had been blank. "Bring a tablecloth that tells its own story." She blinked, the words faded. Rowan passed her a small strip of cloth patterned with crows wearing crowns. "For inspiration," he said. "Fabric store's having a sale." Ada tucked it into her coat. "Do you ask for payment at some point?" His laugh was gentle. "You've paid already." With honesty, the teenager in the marching band jacket raised a hand. "Sir, could I get a cone of Final Bow fudge? I have auditions next week." Rowan nodded, scooped an indigo-streaked chocolate that crackled with gold dust. The boy tasted it, then exhaled a note so rich the glass jars vibrated. Ada realized each customer was here seeking the same thing, clarified courage. She left the store, buzzing with community. Saturday dawned bright, with clouds like torn napkins. Ada arrived at Ridley Lane carrying a second-hand folding table, her sketches, and a banner painted the night before, "Drifting Lantern Art." She draped Rowan's chromattern cloth over the table, set up her prints, and waited. The wait lasted 7 minutes. A woman in a beret stopped, bought 2 postcards, and asked whether Ada sold framed original. A man with a Labrador requested a custom pet portrait. A child wanted to know if the lighthouse on legs could meet mermaids. By noon, Ada's throat ached from happy conversation. She felt present in her own life, an emotion so new it bordered on vertigo. When she counted her cash box, tears pricked. Not fortune, but proof of potential. She had made something people valued. Rowan walked by, hands in pockets like any passerby. Their eyes met. He tipped an invisible hat and kept strolling. She almost called after him, but a thought surfaced. He was giving her the dignity of authorship. She was the one doing this, not magic alone. Still, the parlor pulled her back that evening. She wanted to say thank you and also ask what came next, because once a dream starts, it grows larger than its container. Inside Garner's, the walls had adopted a sunset hue. Glass jars of toppings glimmered like city skylines. Rowan greeted her with a nod. "Something light tonight," he said before she spoke, "because your mind's already racing." He uncovered quiet thunder sorbet, colorless, clear as melted snow. The flavor whispered lavender, blue hour, and long exhalations. Ada closed her eyes. She saw the upcoming choices branching like crystalline rivers, scaling down insurance hours, budgeting lean months, battling the weight of self-doubt that would come howling when novelty faded. But in the center of the web stood a sturdier version of herself, brush in hand, wind in hair, laughing amid tacked-up paintings. When she opened her eyes, there were fewer shadows in the corners of the shop. She placed a 20 on the counter. "For the next first-timer," she said. Rowan accepted the bill wordlessly, but his smile shone. In upper zero, the weeks that followed resembled time-lapse footage of flowers opening. Ada reduced her corporate hours to 4 days, then 3. Every Saturday she manned her market booth, and each time she sold enough to believe the past week wasn't a fluke. She registered for a spring craft fair, launched an online store, and posted practice sketches daily, fighting the inner critic with consistency. Yet uncertainty visited like winter flu. A stormy Thursday found her staring at a blank storyboard, unable to enter the imaginative current. The art looked stale, her bank account thinner than winter sunlight. She pulled on boots and instinctively headed to Lock Street. Tonight, Garner's smelled of cedar smoke and oranges. Few patrons occupied the tables. A muted hush blanketed the room, as though the parlor itself recognized her mood. Rowan raised an eyebrow. Creative gridlock? And creeping terror, she admitted. I've cut my hours again. Health insurance is a question mark. What if this is self-delusion with sprinkles? Rowan leaned on the counter. There's a flavor for self-doubt, but I rarely serve it by itself. Counterproductive. Let's complement it. He opened 2 cylinders, trepidation, toffee, and compass, rose, mulberry. He twirled scoops into a sundae crowned by a shard of sugar glass twinkling like a star. Ada tasted the toffee first, bittersweet, the sting of deadlines, the tremble before an audience decides. Then the mulberry, tart, grounding, reminiscent of soil after rain, of roots gripping earth. The star burst into cool brightness, an aftertaste of inevitability, like tides. Within the shimmer of flavor, an image formed, a ledger, columns of expenses and income. Next to it, a calendar marked with illustration agency submission dates. Beside that, a list of skills still to learn. Digital painting, licensing contracts, not fantasy, but blueprint, requiring sweat and late nights, but illuminated by purpose. She set down her spoon, breath steady. Thank you. She whispered, clarity is iterative, Rowan said, like ice cream best enjoyed in layers. As she turned to leave, he added, there's someone who may need your experience soon. Keep watch. Equity City spring unfurled, Ada's days filled with client emails, art supplies, and the intoxicating exhaustion of pouring oneself into work that answers back. One April afternoon, a direct message pinged, Hi, I'm Max from the Saturday Market, marching band jacket. Thinking of applying to a performing arts conservatory. Could use advice, portfolio, and nerves. Coffee? They met at a library cafe. Max wanted to compose music for animated films, but feared moving across the country. Ada shared how Garner's ice cream had shoved her past a similar threshold. She left out the magic ingredients, explaining instead the principle, you honor a dream by giving it structure. She drew charts on napkins, calculation timelines, audition budgets, and watched his shoulders straighten. Midway through, she realized Rowan's promise had come true. Someone needed her clarity. Passing it on felt like adding a lantern to a flotilla. So like summer's first heat wave broke when thunder drummed west of the river, Ada secured her booth tent with extra stakes. Raindrops hammered canvas, customers fled. Muddy water threatened her stock. She shoved prints into plastic tubs, hands shaking, envisioning ruined inventory and rent due. A familiar gleam of brass caught her eye. Rowan stood beneath a black umbrella embroidered with tiny stars. He offered shelter until the worst passed. When gusts eased, Ada found her tubs dry. Rowan's umbrella had turned a pelting storm into a tap dance over a month. She realized she had not visited Garner's in over a month. Too busy making remember the place that had made her. Guilt pricked, until Rowan said, tools shouldn't overshadow the builder. If you outgrow us for a spell, we celebrate. Still, she went that evening, partly to express gratitude, partly to discover whether the flavors changed with seasons. Inside, the cylinders gleamed, but new plaques had appeared. Legacy lemon verbena, branching family tree bark, derived pistachio. Rowan motioned to a back door she had never noticed. Tonight, I'm giving house tours. Interested? The door opened onto a courtyard strung with lanterns, enclosing a circular garden whose hedges formed a labyrinth of low walls. In each nook sat people eating ice cream, speaking softly. Rowan explained that sometimes patrons helped each other decode what the flavors revealed. Dreams intersect, he said. Ambitions aren't private planets, but constellations. At one alcove, the elderly woman Ada had seen months before showed sketches of quilting designs to a software developer who countered with algorithms to turn them into virtual reality fabrics. At another, Max excitedly shared a prototype soundtrack for an animation clip. A filmmaker gave him notes. Ada felt the community like steady drum beats beneath her ribs. She wasn't succeeding in a vacuum. She was a thread in tapestry. She took a seat by a stone fountain and tasted shared horizon hazelnut, which carried hints of bonfire smoke, peach blossom, and something warmly metallic, like keys passed hand to hand. Visions danced, children reading books she had yet to draw, adults who rediscovered wonder through those pages, artists who would cite her illustrations as catalysts for their own journeys. The sensation was sweeping, but rather than inflate her ego, it rooted her deeper into humility. Impact was an echo, not a pedestal. The equity autumn painted the trees copper. Ada signed a contract with Windwheel Publishing to illustrate a picture book about a lighthouse that grows legs and searches for lost ships. Deadline tight, she worked late, her apartment littered with drafts. Every so often, paralysis crept in, but now she possessed tools, structured schedules, breathing exercises, and when needed, a short walk to Lock Street. Garners changed with October, pumpkins crowned the windows, and Rowan traded his constellation apron for one patterned with falling leaves. One night, Ada found him adjusting a chalkboard that read, Flavor Retirement Ceremony Oct 31. She asked what it meant. Some dreams end, he said, or more kindly, evolve beyond ice cream. On Halloween, we scoop them one final time and wish them Godspeed. Ada attended. The parlor filled with patrons, old faces and new sampling, farewell flavors, empty nest nougat dissolved into laughter and tears from parents whose children had left for college. Final curtain coconut was savored by a stage actress opening a drama school. Ada chose cubicle chrysalis caramel, thinking of her own journey from insurance desk to draft table. The flavor was softer than she remembered, like nostalgia folded into gratitude. Rowan rang a silver bell. When the last spoon drops, he announced, these ambitions will belong entirely to their dreamers, no longer needing our taste tests. The bell chimed again, and Ada felt a subtle shift, like training wheels lifting, or oars pulling free of water because the boat had grown sails. Quote, the picture book debuted in spring. Reviews used phrases Ada once scribbled in hypothetical journals. Whimsical panorama, deft line work, exuberant color. She hosted a reading at the same attic where childhood forts once stood, now renovated into a community art studio. Max performed an original score beneath her narration. The room rustled with applause. Ada thought of how a single scoop had unfolded into this symphony. Afterwards, she walked to Lock Street. The parlor lights were off. A handwritten note on the door read, Dream season concluded, back soon after weeding belief from doubt. In the meantime, trust your flavor. She pressed her palm against the glass. Faint warmth lingered, as though Rowan's starry apron were on the other side. Ada smiled, slipped a postcard under the door, an illustration of Garner's facade glowing like a lantern, and headed home through streets fragrant with late cherry blossoms. About a month later, the sign returned. Doors open, bell merry. Ada entered, prepared to try a new flavor, but Rowan offered a plain white scoop. Milk? She asked, puzzled. Full circle vanilla, he said. Tastes like beginnings. She tasted sunlight on wood floors, stubby crayons, the first page of every adventure. It reminded her that dreams never finish. They reincarnate, each chapter sprouting fresh questions to answer. Across the counter, Rowan lifted a lid marked blank map marshmallow. And Ada understood. Soon it would be time to chart unfamiliar territory again. Maybe mentorship, maybe a studio collective, maybe something outside drawings entirely. She licked her spoon clean, ready for whatever shape tomorrow's flavor would take, secure in the knowledge that clarity, like ice cream, melts unless shared. And she carried plenty.